Hello, in this video we're going to talk about submitting translations, doing lookups on Japanese text in our translation tool. So let's go ahead and grab some text from a script here. And this is a translated script, but I'm going to pull the translation out here. And we'll just start with the Japanese text. So what I'd like to show to start with is these options here, and explain a little bit about what these mean and kind of how I've conceived of this, the way that this text is processed. And a lot of that has to do with the kind of text I deal with a lot, which is very similar to this. We have a lot of, we have Japanese sort of interspersed with a lot of, these are control codes, a lot of like formatting codes for triggering different things, and we've got explicit line break characters and comments and characters and just all kinds of stuff in here. These are also, it's kind of line by line based. It's not, you know, if this were just, those are actually line breaks. If this didn't line break, these would wrap like this, kind of like a paragraph of text. But that's not what we're dealing with here. So this is the kind of text that the program deals with well out of the gate. So let's take a look at the options that we have. One is to discard non-Japanese. And I will admit I don't use this very much, but so I mean it may be kind of worthless, but the idea was that we're processing this in such a way that the things that are Japanese and the things that aren't, there's a certain amount of separation between them, so it's relatively easy to get rid of that. And it's possible that maybe, I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff like this and we don't care about it, we just want the Japanese. So let's go ahead and, I mean the translation. So let's go ahead and choose that. Now, again, this tool is in alpha and it's something I just use for myself. Nobody else uses this right now. So certain niceties I haven't really put in here because I understand what this means. And currently, you are able to choose both to discard the non-Japanese, but then use the translation with control codes, which is this non-Japanese stuff, and that doesn't make any sense. In fact, I think it will cause an error. So what we're going to choose instead is translation without control codes. I have nothing in here to, you know, make it so you can't select that when you do select that, which wouldn't be hard to put in, but that's how it is. And let's hit continue. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so we have our stuff here, and we'll talk about that in a different video, but in this we can see we have the translation, and it's just all by itself. No control codes, no comment characters, all that stuff stripped out. And we also have this translation overwrites next line. Now what that is for is kind of like that bit of script that I pasted in there originally, had the Japanese line followed by the translation. And you need to have a line, you have to have white space available for that translation to exist in, otherwise you'll have an error. And again, I'm sure it's not all that hard for me to put in some sort of processing that, you know, automatically adds those in there for you, but I haven't done that, so you need to do that by hand currently. But we're not going to do that right now, so we're going to say translation doesn't overwrite next line. Let's finish it. What that means is the translation is going to overwrite the Japanese. And there it is. We have just our translation with no control codes. So let's try the next option. This time we're going to preserve the non-Japanese, because those are the only other options that we are able to do here. And we have the translation with control codes. Let's do that. We'll hit continue. Okay, so here's the translation with control codes. You can see all the control codes are in there, and the program, it doesn't really have a concept of, in particular, of here's this Japanese, and it's the Japanese that exists between this control code and this control code, and this is this Japanese, and these are like, you know, translated separately from each other or anything like that. In fact, it really shouldn't, because it's possible that this Japanese and this Japanese together make some sort of word or phrase or something that's in the translation memory, and it kind of has to be dealt with sort of all as one thing. So because of that, it has to kind of guess where to put the control codes when it's putting them back in, but it does a pretty good job of putting them together. Sometimes you'll find you want to shuffle this around a little bit, but that's it's kind of the nature of the beast. But let's go ahead and just overwrite our Japanese lines again, this time with these control codes. We'll finish this up. And there it is. So last time we had no control codes, this time we do have control codes. We'll go back to this, and we'll do this one more time. You know, this time I guess I will add some white space in, so you can see what this is like. So we're going to hit Options, and this time I could pick segments, but let me just pick no default currently. And will I continue? Okay, so here we have, this is kind of how I originally conceived of this tool working, and I don't really know why I thought it would be super useful to have the with control codes version, just the translation, and the segments version all at the same time. Now the segments, really what that's useful for is really only in a script like this that has lots of control codes in it and they're really complicated and confusing looking. If you look at this, it's a little jumbled, and this it's a little clearer what is actually the translated text in that. So that's the reason for the segments, and if you wanted to use that alone, or just to, you know, I don't even know why you would use this particular view of all three of these. It would actually force you to select each one that you wanted to use, and you can do that. I mean, I'll use the segments here, I'll use the translation with the control codes here, and I'll use the translation there. And we're going to have them overwrite the next line. I'll hit Finish. And there it is. So we got the segments in there, which actually for some reason didn't even strip the control code off. That must be something peculiar to the segments processing. Then you've got the with control code and the without control code. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that sort of a thing, but I would say 99% of the time what I'm doing is something that has some white space in it, to and that the Japanese is commented out, and I'm using preserve the control codes and the translation with control codes. And that's what we get. I'd say 99% of the time that's what I'm doing with it.